Welcome to yet another interesting episode of Lifestyle with D, where we encourage you to stay healthy because your health is your greatest wealth. And today we are privileged again to have one Dr. Peter Mokaya from the Organic Consumer Alliance, and he'll be telling us more about organic foods, the importance of organic foods, and why you should eat organically grown food. So thank you so much, Dr. Peter, for joining us again today.
Thank you, Diana.
Yes. So we're so honored to have you again. We really learnt a lot from the other episode of obesity, and many people were asking, questions on how they can even now get to eat organically foods, and that's why we're here today. So before we even get to the topic on organic foods, there's the issue of the foods that our parents, let me say, they used to eat those traditional foods, and when you go to the hospital, probably they tell you these are the kind of foods that you eat, but they seem a bit unreachable to the common mwananchi. What is your take on that?
Thank you, Diana. I appreciate, again, the privilege to have this dialogue, this sharing, and the opportunity to continue from where we left last time.
Of course.
Accessibility to foods that were eaten by our fathers, our grandfathers and grandmothers, people who preceded hardly 100 years ago, 50 to 100 years ago, were eating food that was natural.
Yes.
For lack of a better word, we now use the word organic.
Yeah.
Basically to imply food that is grown on soils that don't have exposure to synthetic chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes with farm manure and with composting.
Yes.
So it's surprising that people are saying that those kind of foods are not easy to access.
Yeah.
And yet one wonders what would have happened over the last 25, 50 years, a little more.
Yeah.
Those foods were easily, accessibly available, and they were consumed not just here in Africa, but I think
everywhere.
All over the world, everywhere.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is to unpack the reasons why now that we've realized those foods were more nutritious, more healthy, why they're not easily accessible.
Yeah.
And like you said correctly, the realization that they are healthier foods, how people can go back, access those foods, and consume them to be able to achieve or to restore their wellness or their health.
And I think it's more in the urban area as opposed to rural areas where you find at least people with their farms, they can do this. But as opposed to urban in the city where people just don't, they just buy anything from the supermarket and that's what they eat.
Yes, believe it or not, it's more prevalent, more common for people in the cities. But now, increasingly, even people in the rural areas, the so-called rural areas, are also knowingly or unknowingly growing their food on soils that in many ways have been contaminated with chemicals, the fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers.
Yeah.
And therefore, while it's more common, what's more difficult for people in the cities to access that kind of food, I think it's important for the audience to know that increasingly, almost everywhere else, even in the rural areas, it's difficult now to find food that you can call organic.
Yeah.
So that those kind of foods are becoming rarer and rarer, but there are ways which we can adopt, which we can encompass, that can make it possible for us to access those foods. And I think as we dialogue, we will discuss a bit of some of that as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons as well is it because many people are rushing for quick money. So they are growing their things with the synthetic chemicals, as you have named them.
Yes, that's very true, Diana. There is a money component. Yeah. Obviously, if you're growing tomatoes, and your tomatoes can be ready in 3.5 months for harvesting, and somebody else who's growing his tomatoes or her tomatoes, oftentimes women doing this job, is going to take an extra 2 months. The temptation is to opt for what grows or matures faster.
Yeah.
Tomatoes maturing faster, chicken being ready faster, aka the broilers and the kind of Kenchik type of chicken that are often consumed.
Yes.
Supposedly to satisfy the market demand. But let's backpedal a little. While we appreciate that people need to recoup certain costs from their investments, food was not initially meant to be a commodity for sale. Let us start from there.
Yeah.
While many people are advocating the whole issue of agro or agribusiness for
Agribusiness.
income generation,
Yes.
which I do encompass to put food on the table,
Oh, yeah.
empower women, empower youth.
Definitely.
There is nothing wrong with that as long as we strike a balance between profit and health.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said clearly, and I think this is for the audience to appreciate, we need to appreciate firstly that food was not meant to be a commodity per se. It was meant to be a nutrient, a natural nutrient that is the continuum between humanity, the plants, the animals, the soil, and the ecosystem. There was that continuous kind of cycle that we were meant to maintain. And because we have, to a certain extent, ladies and gentlemen, broken this cycle, that's probably why we are seeing an explosion of diseases.
Yeah.
And I can just pause there and say, what is disease? Disease is a state of not being at ease.
Yeah.
We fundamentally have interfered with the way food was grown.
Definitely.
We've enhanced using chemicals,
Yes.
pesticides, and more lately, what is known as biotechnology, enhance the speed and the rate at which we are growing food, supposedly to feed a higher number of people. But unfortunately, what we've resulted in achieving is food that is nutrient deficient, lacking certain key nutrients, trace elements, and in the process, we've introduced chemicals, some of which are not healthy,
Yeah.
and there's some other substances which, because of growing the food in contaminated areas, we've contaminated with heavy metals like mercury, lead, and cadmium.
Yeah.
So it is true that there is need to grow the food a little faster, but the question we need to ask ourselves is at what cost?
At what cost?
If we are growing food faster at the cost of our health,
Imagine.
and our health is the first wealth,
Yes.
you see the balance.
Yeah.
So I would say that let's try and unpack this issue of organic and really do a cost-benefit analysis and say, would you rather be healthy by consuming food that grows slower?
Yes.
Yeah, what you call slow food, as opposed to consuming what you call fast food, aka the pizzas, the chips, and so on,
Yes.
and then lose your health. Yeah, so that instead of giving your money to the farmer, after some time you end up giving much more money to the pharmacists.
Yes.
You either give your money to the farmer,
Or the pharmacist.
or you give them to the pharmacist later.
That's a good one.
And when you give your money to the pharmacist, most likely you're giving for so long a time,
I
eventually
know.
you go 6 feet
Oh my gosh.
down the grade. That's the likely outcome.
Yes. And
Yes,
so,
yes.
what are some of the foods that we are talking about? Traditional foods that
Yes.
you said natural. They are natural that our parents used to eat long time ago, and now we really don't care much about them.
It is interesting that we don't, we even lost touch with what foods our parents and our grandparents used to consume.
True.
And indeed, it's a challenge even for my own children who are in their early 20s and late 30s to appreciate these foods. But these foods were, other than growing slower, were the kind of foods that grew in the farms.
Yeah.
From the process or that agriculture that's required you to use manure, to use composting, and that were largely vegetables.
Yes.
Let's start from there. And from the vegetables, the grass, there will be a bit of chicken with eggs, the chicken themselves running around, the Kenyaji chicken. Maybe there could be a goat or so here and there. And those who are able to afford, they could have a cow for milk, and probably one or two others for oxen and food. So that chain of the ecological chain.
Yeah.
So the foods, the primary foods that human beings were meant to consume, I strongly believe, were vegetables.
Yeah.
What are these vegetables? These vegetables invariably, in almost all communities where there's an soil, let's not talk about pastoralists, nature knew what was necessary, so it grew the sagas, the saggets,
Yes. Yeah. Saggets, yeah.
which in some communities are considered as weeds.
Oh
In the
yeah.
Western world, in the US, they will consider sagas
Weeds,
as
yeah.
weeds, manogus, tereres,
Yes.
mito, if the audience can appreciate some of these names, and many other vegetables, of course now including tomatoes, the pumpkins and so on, that range of foods. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, this food was grown naturally, aka without chemicals, without agrochemicals, without fertilizers. And they grew, and they were healthy. Why were they healthy? Although they grew a bit slower, they had the advantage of accessing the nutrients from the soil.
Yeah.
the nutrients from the soil, let me emphasize this, these micronutrients, which include the trace elements like the manganese, the zinc, the iron, and so on, were not just there by accident, they were there. Nature had a reason why it put that in those particular naturally composted fertilizers, what we call manures, that enabled these plants to grow with what you will call a high nutrient content. So that when we consume these foods, the iron, the zinc, the manganese, which were in small amounts, are critical components of a proper functioning of our body metabolism.
Yes.
Now, that to me is probably one of the most important take-home messages for the audience. The first rule of knowing whether you're eating healthy food or non-healthy food is whether you're getting your food from the farm or the shop or the supermarket. If your value chain of accessing food is food that is grown from the farm through a farmer or a market, in our scenario where we believe in organic markets, there is a difference in the sense that that food is fresh oftentimes, it's natural, it's been taken, and the duration between accessing the food and getting it to your table is a shorter duration. That food, especially if it's grown organically, is the way food was designed to be. Whether it is vegetables, greens, green leafy vegetables, or chicken, or eggs, or milk from a goat, or meat from a goat, or milk from a cow, or meat from a cow. They had consumed natural products, and they were bound to have nutrients that will enable us to live in balance, in sync with nature, and hence be able to ward off diseases.
I believe there's an organic way actually to not to use these chemicals to treat the soil. So some people or some farmers argue that that this is why we use chemicals, because nowadays the fruits or the vegetables are affected by the diseases more than they could have been back then, because of there's so much pollution as well. So we'll be taking a short break, but when we come back, we'll be talking more about this. So if you have any feedback or questions, kindly send them on our SMS line 20058 or my Twitter handle @DDMyS. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Lifestyle with D. We are talking about organic foods, how it is important for us to eat organically grown foods, and we are talking to Dr. Peter Mokaya. If you have any questions, kindly send them on our SMS line 20058. We were talking about the traditional foods, and one of the questions we got is sometimes you go to medical practitioners and they say that what we can do is they advise you to eat some foods that seem, when you go back to research, it's actually just the foods you can get from the supermarket.
Yes.
But the ones they're giving you, they'll put them at some high expensive rates that seem like healthy. They make it seem like healthy eating is very expensive. So what would you say about that?
Yes, thanks for asking that question, Diana. I have had it asked of me before.
Yes.
And Dr. you are able to afford organic food.
Yeah.
Organic food, unfortunately, is viewed, and rightfully so, as a niche food, kind of food for those who can afford, usually the elite and the upper middle class. And therefore, we can hardly put food on the table, issues of food security. So we will eat whatever we can. And we don't think that organic can feed the world because organic foods are expensive. Yeah. And then the question I normally say is, why is there the perception that organic food is expensive? And indeed, that's a correct perception from whatever service you've done. We go a little further back. Before the break, you say that you put forward the argument that farmers are saying they have to use fertilizers because the soil is not, it doesn't appear to have the nutrients it had before, and because of that they have to supplement the soils with synthetic fertilizers, and then later on they have to put on spray pesticides, herbicides and other chemicals to ward off these pests and other nuisances that affect the growth and development of of the plants, and
Yeah.
you could even say the same for animals: the chicken, the goats, the cows, and so on. Uh, let's take a little one or two steps back.
Yes.
And I think this is something we need to very honestly, very methodologically look through and say, while we don't say that the shifting back to organic foods is an immediate solution, but going forward, I think we need to ask ourselves, where did the rain start beating us?
Yeah.
Were we unable to produce food enough to feed organically, or was the introduction of agrochemicals and synthetic pesticides introduced to us from outside?
Before, yes.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is, if we had been allowed to continue living our lives without interference from the chemicals and fertilizers, I want to believe, and the research has now shown that we would have still been able to produce enough and healthy food,
Yes.
including the vegetables, the animals, and so on, that will have sustained us into infinitum, into the future.
It would have still met the demand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question is here: is it the chicken or the egg which came faster? Was the soil deficient, and as a result, we had to add chemicals?
Yeah.
My take and research backs me up, ladies and gentlemen, is that what has depleted the soil of its nutrients
Yes.
is the chemicals, or rather synthetic chemicals, that we have introduced as artificial components into those soils.
Yes.
Nature, left on its own, had a way of embracing these different components and really creating a balanced nutrient balance within the soil, because the soil is a living organism. And I summarize it this way. If the soil is healthy, the plants are going to be healthy,
Definitely.
animals are going to be healthy, and we who consume this food will be healthy. What has happened is that we've created a vicious circle whereby we, using the chemicals, we've destroyed the soil, and increasingly now we find that even in the belts where they used to grow a lot of food, food is not growing as healthy and as fast as it used to. The production has gone down. As a result, we now are forced to use more and more of the synthetic chemicals, which is of course costly to the farmers. As a result, it's not cost effective. Now, organic foods were kind of lost in the way, and now we're realizing they're necessary and they're important. So the few who are growing them, quite frankly, are taking advantage of knowing that they have higher value and selling to the market based on market forces. So the whole issue of organic foods being expensive is based on the simple economic model of demand and supply. Pure and simple. As a matter of fact, Diana, the TV is listening. If you analyze production of organic food, it's actually cheaper.
It is actually
in the long
cheaper.
run to
It
produce
is
organic
cheaper.
food,
Yes.
because our ancestors, produced it, than the synthetic, the chemically supported synthetically produced food. Because you don't have to put on these inputs, and these inputs are expensive. You buy them from the shop. If you're using manure and you're using farmyard manure and composting, you don't buy it from anybody. It's actually available as an input within your shamba, your garden, your farm, or within the neighborhoods. So really, it is a perception because of the issues of supply and demand. And once we educate our people, and more people start growing or adopting organic farming systems, again, the forces of demand and supply will balance out, such that those who are doing organic farming can be able to break even or make a profit without having to charge what at the moment appears like a more inflated cost.
Yeah, and I think it should be easier for even people in urban areas to actually do what some farmers have adopted, that is like bag gardening.
Yes.
And it should be easier to actually grow your foods organically when you're using that system, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and are there people who actually say they grow their foods organically, but they don't? Have you heard of such?
Yes and no. I mean, having been an organic practitioner, I talk to farmers, I talk to retailers, I talk to wholesalers.
Or some actually don't know that
so
it's not.
oftentimes, quite honestly, it is a question of, firstly, awareness, correct information, and issues of integrity, standards, certification, and really creating a full awareness of the value chain of organic food production, and removing this myth that we need fertilizers and chemicals to grow food to feed the world, and also remove this myth that organic is expensive. Of course, there are always one or two bad eggs. There are those who may want to leverage, knowing that organic food is expensive. I mean, brings more returns, who may want to charge or want to claim that their food is organic
Yes.
without the proper certification. Well, I would want to say that that may not necessarily be a common practice. We have a system, although the government hasn't fully adopted it, and we hope that with the policy frameworks being developed, now the new agricultural policy does appreciate the existence of the organic subsector. It will come up with standards, regulations of ensuring that those who claim they're growing organic food are actually growing organic food. And there's some details I don't want to go into, the forms of certification, individual certification, and what we call PGS, participatory guaranteed systems. That, to answer your question in a ballpark, there are a few, less than 10% who claim they're selling organic. As in every industry, there are bad eggs, but they are the minority rather than the majority.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Would like to talk about, as we wrap up the show, the importance of information to people, given to people. How much can people access? How can people access this kind of information?
Yes, Dan. Well, let me just start by saying that unfortunately, some of us being practitioners of healthcare for the last 30 odd years, there seems to be a deliberate misinformation campaign out there because of obviously vested financial interests.
Yes.
Whereby we haven't told our people the truth. As I said last time, for people to know the truth, and as we say the truth will set us free, is that there needs to be awareness, and more awareness, and providing correct, accurate information. And if you do that, clearly, all of us together, including those who have a divergent opinion, we will agree that the way to the future is agroecological organic. Studies have now shown that clearly, that if we want to sustain our health, sustain the health of our planet, reverse and mitigate climate change, we need to move in the direction of agroecological organic. And this information needs to be shared among the doctors. My class of 85, wherever you are, we are participating in sharing this information out to the audiences. Pole, the truth is going to come out. And I want to just conclude by saying that this information is not just from Dr. Mokaya, who's sitting in front of the TV right now. That is done by FAO. There's a famous study that was done about a decade ago, known as the IAASTD report, done by more than 400 scientists from over 80 countries. Took 4 years. It endorsed the fact that going forward, if we want to sustain health, to restore health, and ensure that we are in tandem with Mother Nature, we need to revert back and shift our food production systems into agroecological organic systems. I hope this dialogue is going to continue because we are dialoguing, we are sharing information. Firstly, as I said last time, I want to repeat this again. There is a guy known as Hippocrates. This guy lived a long time ago. And he in 431 BC, he's a father of modern medicine.
Yes, he is.
And he very famously said, let food be your medicine. And your medicine be your food.
True.
That, for me, summarizes all of it. While we appreciate the role of pharmaceuticals and that kind of medicine that your doctor advises, we want to appreciate the role that has been neglected of the role of food. The right nutrients, because food provides the fuel, the engine that ensures that even the drugs work. Because in any case, most of these drugs are made from plant and animal products. So I would want to say that let's listen to that clarion call. Even as doctors, we know, most of my colleagues who run clinics know very well that food finally comes in, and that if we eat the right food, we will be healthier. And therefore, we will encourage our people to really look at the whole sphere of health as health care, caring for your health, as Diana, as myself, as opposed to waiting until you're sick and going to the doctor to give you sick care. So that there is a need for a paradigm shift from sick care to health care. And that is anchored on diet, on nutrition, and preferably organic food that's free from chemicals and toxic agrochemicals.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Mokaya. We have learned so much about organically grown foods. And if you have any feedback for Dr. Mokaya, you can send them on our SMS line 20058 or my Twitter handle at @DDMyers. And also, if you would like to access more information on organic foods, you can visit organicconsumers.co.ke for more information on this. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it WTV.